Hi there, guys. Who's ready for another chapter? I just snuggled into bed and I'm going to read you chapter 3. Ready? Chapter 3 Wolf Granny. Why, hello, Red, said the wolf. Don't you look tasty, I mean lovely, today? Oh, Granny, I said, what big eyes you have! The better to see you with, my dear, said the wolf. Come closer, will you? I stepped closer. Granny, what big ears you have! The better to hear you with, my dear. Come just a little closer. I stepped right beside the bed. Oh, Granny, what big teeth you have! The better to eat you with. The wolf opened its jaws and swallowed my head. I shrieked until its teeth tickled my neck, and then I laughed. Finally, the wolf stopped and let me go. It reached up with its hairy paws and pulled off its head, revealing Granny underneath. She smacked her lips. You were delicious. Sometimes Granny used a wolf disguise to scare unwanted visitors away. I was generally a wanted visitor, so someone must have come recently. Who was it this time, I asked. Oh, just some chatty girl. Grandma received a steady stream of visitors who wanted their fortunes told or magical cures for whatever ailments they had. The wolf costume was a quicker way to be rid of people when trying to explain that magic didn't always do what you wanted it to. This girl would not go away, said Granny. She knocked and chattered endlessly about needing some potion. Finally, I had to turn myself into a wolf. Otherwise, I probably would have turned her into a mouse. I laughed. You could turn her into a mouse? You wouldn't. I could, and I would, said Granny. Here, watch. I'll show you. The spell goes like this. Squeak and skitter, tiny critter. Stop, I cried. I don't want to be a mouse. Granny looked offended. I wasn't going to turn you into a mouse. I was going to turn Milk into a mouse. There was a clip-clop on the wooden floor. Ma! A goat was tethered to the foot of Granny's bed, chewing on some fresh clover. Why is Milk in the house? Milk was an old nanny goat that no longer gave milk, but Granny kept her around anyway. Milk used to belong to my friend Rump, but then he left the mountains to go on his own adventures. Before he left, he gave Granny the goat, and she'd become sort of a pet. I couldn't leave her outside by herself, said Granny. There's a monster in the woods. They took another pig. Another pig? Cursed that wolf. That was his second this month. I shouldn't have given him any pork. Clearly he'd eaten already. I'd have words for him next time. Or stones. I met a wolf prowling not too far from here. Perhaps you should bring the pigs in the house, too. Not enough room, said Granny. I can spare the pigs, but not Milk. She's a good guard goat. A guard goat? The goat bit into a lump of hay and chewed noisily. Yes, she warns me when intruders are coming. She warned me about you. I'm not an intruder. You are to her, said Granny, laughing, and then her laugh turned into a cough. She blew her nose into her handkerchief, and her hands still disguised as wolf paws. Are you sick? I asked. Well, I'm no songbird. Chipmunks! Granny sneezed. Her voice sounded scruffy and scratchy. Did you need something? I've come to stay with you, remember? Mama and Papa are gone. Oh, yes, of course I remember. I just forgot. Come, let's make supper. Granny slid out of the bed, a furry tail she had attached to her nightgown sticking out behind her. She snapped her fingers and started a fire. I carried the kettle. While I pulled water from the well, Granny pulled carrots from the ground, growing them an extra inch or two as they came out. While I chased a chicken with a stick, Granny brushed the dainty white buds of her strawberry patch, and they swelled and blushed into juicy red berries. While I plucked the feathers from the chicken, Granny plucked a sprig of rosemary and multiplied it into 3. Granny, much like a mother hen, clucked at my pitiful plucking. Red, dear, you know there are better methods for this. She gave her hands over the chickens, magically removing all the feathers I hadn't managed to pull. Chop some vegetables, will you? I got the kitchen knife and painstakingly chopped carrots and onions. My eyes watered from the onions. Don't cry, dear, said Granny. It's so unnecessary. She whispered a spell to the knife, and within seconds the vegetables were perfectly chopped. Sometimes I really wish I could do magic. I wish my magic could be like Granny's. She performed her spells without causing any mayhem. Her magic never harmed anyone. It made everything better. Granny made the whole world wonderful. Soon the soup bubbled, and the air smelled of delicious herbs and onions. I got the spoons while Granny served the soup. She swooped her hands in the air, and the ladle dipped itself into the pot and scooped the steaming soup into our bowls. But on the second bowl, the ladle faltered. The bowl toppled over from the table and broke in two, splattering soup all over. Oh dear! Granny swayed a little and leaned against the table. I rushed to her. What's wrong? She clasped my arm. Her hands were cold and clammy, despite the warmth from the fire. I think I overdid it, she said. I'm not the sprightly witch I once was. She tried to laugh, but ended up coughing instead. Maybe you should lie down. I tried to lead her to her bed. Granny waved me away. I'm just famished is all. I forgot breakfast when that silly girl came nosing around. Let's eat. I cleaned up the mess while Granny ladled the soup without magic, using just her own two hands. They trembled ever so slightly. We slurped out soup and ate bread, spread thick with butter and honey, followed by the juicy strawberries. I spotted a dwarf yesterday, said Granny. I dropped my spoon. You did? Where? I had never seen a dwarf. Very few people ever had, but Granny encountered one when she was 12, same age as me, and her stories made me eager to find one myself. I saw him close to the stream. I tried to follow him, but he disappeared down a hole. In my younger years, I would have caught him. I can't understand it, I said. I've searched for dwarfs for ages, and yet you spot one on a morning walk. I shoved a strawberry in my mouth. Just as well, said Granny. Dwarfs are crabby, crotchety creatures, secretive and reclusive. They detest humans. Most dwarves, their entire lives, live without ever coming above ground. That's why so few humans ever see one. I'll see one, I said, determined. I've seen a fair few things most humans haven't. If you do, keep that hidden. She pointed to the ruby ring I wore around my neck. Granny had given it to me when I was born. It was supposed to remind me that my name held beauty and magic, or some such nonsense. Why? I asked. Dwarves love rubies. They love all gems, but rubies are their favorite. They'll steal it from you when they see it. Probably give them loads of magic. I clutched at the ring. Dwarf magic is powerful indeed, according to Granny. They know where everything is, and their underground tunnels go everywhere. The kingdom, the mountain, yonder, and beyond. They know every landmark, and they know where to find things. Powerful things, secret things. Things you never knew existed. Dwarves are little traveling wizards. If you've ever lost or need to find something, a dwarf can set you straight, but only if you take them by the beard. If you take a dwarf by the beard, they have to do whatever you say. Take you wherever you want to go and tell you whatever you wish to know. One day you'll catch a dwarf, said Granny, and he'll show you all sorts of secret magical things. But be warned, dwarves can be nasty little tricksters. It doesn't matter, I said, trying to sound as though I didn't care. I have you, and you know more than dwarves. Huh. I won't be around forever, said Granny. She coughed into her sleeve. Get me some water, would you? I'm parched. I poured a cup of water. Her hands trembled as she lifted the cup to her mouth. You're really sick, aren't you? I asked. Do you think I'm placating? No, it's just, I trailed off. It was just that Granny was never sick. For as long as I could remember, she hadn't suffered so much as a runny nose, and she had a potion to cure every ailment. Last winter, I became so ill I could barely breathe, so Granny gave me her curious cure-all, a slimy green concoction that tasted like poison, but I was better the next day. Of course, that was all Granny needed. Where's your curious cure-all? I asked. Gone, said Granny. You had the last spoonful last winter, remember? Of course, it would be my fault. Can't you make more? I asked. Granny shook her head. Not when I'm sick. Difficult ingredients, though. You could make it. I stiffened. You know I can't. I know no such thing, and I fancy I know quite a lot. For instance, I know I'm cold. Built up the fire, will you? She pulled her shawl over her shoulders. I put more wood on the fire, then felt her forehead. You're very warm. No, cold, Granny muttered. Perhaps we should go back to bed. I'll clean up. Or perhaps you should go back to bed. Granny coughed and crawled into bed, her wolf tail still attached to her nightgown. I washed and dried the dishes, scrubbed the pot, then swept the floors. If Granny had been well, it would have all been done much faster. She had a very good spell that could make the broom sweep itself. Broom awake, shoo the dirt, clear the floor beneath my skirt. I had tried it once. The broom attacked me and maybe broke a few things. When everything was clean and put away, I sat in Granny's rocking chair and listened to the rasp of her breathing. It was nothing, I told myself, just a little cold. She would be better in the morning. That's the end of Chapter 3. Wonder what's going to happen in Chapter 4. Can't wait. Check you later. Love you guys.